yesterday when we saw Iran enforce its red line of strikes on Lebanon for the first time in its modern history to actually use that as a pretext explicitly to enforce regional action. How did that prove out, that original statement that you made, to watch such a change in their own strategic behavior?
Yeah, so to be clear, I made that public statement in a New York Times piece on April 4th,
that's right.
Where I said Iran is emerging as the fourth center of world power. And also, to be clear, I didn't say that that would happen in a day. I said it would take about 18 months. They were on a trajectory to do that. And I didn't say they would become stronger than the United States. So some people, when you get in these debates, they kind of straw man it a little bit to say but Iran would be the fourth center of world power. Now, what did I mean by that? The United States is the strongest state in the world, and it's a hegemon in its region of the world, the Western Hemisphere. China is the second strongest, and it wants to be and almost is a hegemon in Asia. Russia is the third strongest, and it is vying to become the hegemon in Eastern Europe. That's what's happening with the battle with Ukraine. And who else is a hegemon? There's no other regional hegemons. Iran would be the fourth regional hegemon in the Gulf. That is the dominant state in the Gulf. And what does that look like? That looks like a state which has a sphere of influence, not just worrying about its own narrow protection. And that's what's true of all those other three states. And also, I believe this will also mean that it will protect its allies. And that's exactly what you are seeing here. So this is, we're used to thinking of Hezbollah as like the puppet or the pawn that is expendable to support Iran. This is the other way around. This is Iran establishing a sphere of influence, and it's also extending to the Houthis. So if there's a whole sphere here that is being defined. And that's a sphere of influence, and it is acting to do. And by the way, it's gaining success because its threats, its stronger power, compelled President Trump to make those phone calls to put pressure on Israel to pull back. And the fact is, without Iran gaining power, Donald Trump would never have made those phone calls on the behavior just because Iran was making a threat. So you are seeing reality to that prediction I made 2 months ago. This will strengthen Iran's position in the region and also in the world. So you are seeing the emergence of a fourth center of world power right in front of our eyes. I'm not surprised people were skeptical of this argument because we haven't seen that in our lifetime.
Right.
When was the last time you saw the emergence of a center of world power? Not in our lifetime. That China happened very, very slowly and was already a pretty powerful state. You have to go to back history. This is like Prussia in the 19th century to really kind of put this in some historical perspective.
That's fascinating.
So it's not truly unique.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is how this changed the game for Israel. They have our support. They've bombed something like 7 countries over the past several years, have de facto annexed parts of Syria, have de facto annexed, most of Gaza, taken complete control over the West Bank, have now invaded and taken control over parts of Lebanon, and have been able to do all of this basically with impunity. You'd have to think that this new reality would, constrain them quite significantly in ways that they aren't used to in recent years.
It's going to constrain them more over time, and because it's part of the new emerging reality. But don't think that it's going to stop all at once, but you're seeing the beginning of this change now. So what you can expect over time is as that new security architecture becomes solidified, and it's only in its early stages, as it becomes solidified, Israel's position is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. Now, that's going to happen for two reasons, not just one reason. Reason number one is Israel's strategic position is a function very heavily of America's strategic position. So as America's strategic position weakens in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf, and it is weakening at now, this inherently weakens Israel's position. But number two, what's going to happen as time goes on is you will see evolutions with the drone and missile capability of Iran's proxy. So we already know that Hezbollah and the Houthis have missile and drone capability. That's not the change. The change, and you're starting to see it just in the last 24 hours, is much more sophisticated, concerted effort with those missiles and drones to think in a calibrated way how to weaken Israel. And so what you see is that we had the issue, of course, with Israel, Lebanon. Everybody's focused on that. But I have been watching the Red Sea and the Houthis. And I haven't been surprised by what we saw in the last 24 hours, which is that the Houthis have stepped into this issue. And what they have done is they are threatening any Israeli-related traffic around the Red Sea.